and the ancestors are looking out for us. God Hayes is exposing them, man.
Okay, you see that chair right there? See how big it is?
Yeah.
Now look at the poke here under it. Scroll down, look at the poke here under it.
Never have it been made so clear.
Young TV. Young.
We running the game right now.
Young TV.
Time to take over.
Young
We the hottest in the game. Hit that like, hit that subscribe button. If you just not tuned in.
TV.
Share, like on your Instagram, Facebook.
Young TV.
If you tuned in, we broadcasting live from 2030, baby.
Young TV. Young
Taking over the game, baby. Oh yeah.
Young TV.
Hit that like.
Young TV.
Get them likes up in the air, you heard me?
Young TV.
Ride by. Hotel Islam.
Young TV.
Assalamu alaikum. Shalom alaikum.
Young TV.
Our Earth has been observed by alien civilizations for at least the past 50 years. Throughout our history, each age in our development is characterized by an ignorance about the scope of possibilities not yet understood, that future generations may look back on with a sympathetic smile of condescension.
To us, in the 20th century Earth, this might seem magical, but I tell people to maintain some sense, if they can, please ask them to maintain some sense of humility. Because if you were to show this video camera, or a hologram, or a laser to someone only 300 Earth years ago, it would appear to be a magic. It would be considered supernatural.
Such is the case with UFOs. To us, they represent intangible illusions between fantasy and reality. The possibility of a purely psychological explanation is ruled out. The discs do not behave in accordance with physical laws, but as though they were weightless, and show signs of intelligent guidance, such as would suggest quasi-human pilots. The officials in possession of authoritative information should not hesitate to enlighten the public as speedily and thoroughly as possible. Dr. Carl Gustav Jung, 1954.
¡Hostia! ¿Qué es lo que es? ¡Cedo! ¡Pero con es normal, ¿Pero qué coño, qué carajo pasa aquí? ¡Me cago en Diola! ¿Pero qué carajo está pasando aquí? ¡Hostia! ¡Vamos la hostia! ¡Cago en Diola! ¡Va la máquina! ¡Va la máquina!
There's just a wealth of information, and I would challenge anybody to disprove that. You see, anyone who says there's no evidence to study has not looked. It's as simple as that.
se pone a elaborar.
Necesito un mapa, boludo. Un mapa bueno.
¿Qué lugar les tocó a ustedes?
La puna.
La puta madre. Este medio. Y después lo pusiste, pero pon los gritos originales y un poco.
Se siente más fuerte el del león.
Se pone un reverb y ya está. Después.
No sé. En tu casa. Tenés un cassette 10 megas y con ese 10 megas. Cuando te pones a descarga 900K bien. Es lo que la gente descarga, 900K. Y aquí se chabón y a la 20 ya querés hablarlo. Ya se cae, era casi igual.
No te iba a caer, Francisco.
No, pasado, puta. ¡Ay, la concha de su madre! Hijo de puta. ¡Vení!
No sé.
¡Lucas! ¿Qué pasa?
No sé, boludo, vení.
Lucas, vení.
Acá, vení. Dale, que se está levantando.
No te mandé, boludo, no te mandé.
Arrímate más.
Se va, boludo.
Ahí se te levanta.
Ahí está, pará.
Viene para acá.
Mira, ¿dónde? Filmalo.
It's just more than, UFO crashes and alien bodies. I mean, there's a whole science here. And to quote Dr. Hynek, he said, the UFOs, whatever they represent a science of the 21st century. Right now, we don't have the technology or the know-how to explain what they are and how they do it.
Thousands of credible sightings continue to persist.
The subject of UFOs is part of the subject matter of some courses that I teach.
Okay.
So it's got academic credibility in the community. Yeah. At least as far as I'm concerned, the evidence is really overwhelming that extraterrestrials are here. It's hard, after you see 5 weeks of that material, it's really hard not to have that opinion, I think.
Abduction accounts from around the world, beginning in the 60s with the Hill case, recall exact similarities and also continue to persist.
What to see is a video from 1983 that happened to catch an unforgettable, shocking event.
The UFO phenomenon has been a part of our lives for the past 50 years. With it comes the possibility that we may finally discover who we are and what we humans might accomplish in a vast cosmos, endowed with intelligence.
What I always state about this phenomenon is that taken together, the collection of all of the photographs, the videotapes, the accounts that I've been mentioning, the ground traces, the physical marks on people's bodies, the descriptions of the events in the craft, and et cetera, the sightings, all of that constitutes an extraordinary phenomenon. And I think it is indisputable that an extraordinary phenomenon demands an extraordinary investigation. Sociological reasons, threat, denial, psychological reasons, economic reasons, political reasons, military reasons. It's not a scientific issue.
For the last few years, it's been thinking a lot more about what's happening on this planet and seeing that the evolution of human consciousness has reached a crisis point, which goes along with the time when we have the potential to step out and start exploring the stars. That's the challenge where we're really facing at the moment. We become masters of the material world, and technology is really, technology is tools, and we've got the most incredible tools now to do almost anything we want in the material world, including stepping off this planet into space. But I think what we've got to become is equal masters of our minds. And that's the next frontier, is inner space. We've got to stop being victims of our fears and all the stuff that's inside us. We've got to actually become masters of ourselves, move beyond this egocentric phase, so that we can then become the true masters of our technology and use that with wisdom for the good of ourselves, the good of the planet, the good of the cosmos.
bueno, זה יורד למטה.
אתה מצלם? אתה רואה?
אני רואה, מה זה?
תגיד, שותים יותר מדי? לא, לא, כולנו רואים את זה.
מה זה?
שיו!
יואו! מה זה?
אמא?
מה זה? ראית? יואו בנברות. ראית את זה?
תראה, יש המון.
הנה, תראי שמה. מה זה?
אמא, לדור, אמא.
יש קבוצה שלמה שם, תראה.
יואו. זה לא אמיתי. מה זה? ראית את זה?
וואו.
If you take a close look, you'll see a ship sucking energy from your sun. Now there's a lot of ships who got this type of technology around the galaxy. A lot of different extraterrestrials who got this type of technology, right? Now, they got some ships that can fly directly through the sun. They got some ships that pass by the sun and absorb the solar energy, like Nubaru. And then they got some ships that actually plug like a car, just like you plug in the wall, to the sun and absorb energy. So there's a whole lot of technology that's getting ready to blow your mind and unfold here in the time to come. If they have the ability to draw energy from the sun, they're at least type 2 civilization. Keep that in mind as we go forward.
When I got to Alaska, I found that my additional duty, I was assigned there as an assistant base operations officer, completely out of my specialty. My specialty was technical engineering. As an assistant base operations officer, and my additional duty was supervising a team of civilian technicians from Wright Field, where I had just come out of, that were installing special equipment aboard the B-29s that were flying their target profiles are over all the B-29 crews had their targets in Russia, and they carried them home with them. They had them with them all the time so they could get on an airplane in 5 minutes and have the targets with them. They were required to fly a profile mission on their targets over the Arctic and Arctic airspace and their Arctic conditions at least once, and every crew was rotated through Alaska to do this. My team was installing special equipment to look for anomalous aerial phenomena, is what the Russians were calling it. We were calling them flying saucers. We were looking for surges in the electrical system. We installed surge detectors in every system on the B-29. There's 5 or 6 different electrical systems. We installed magnetic detectors in the lines. We installed cameras in positions that didn't have, all the gun positions on the B-29 already had 16mm cameras in them. But we installed other cameras that looked forward and looked aft. We had handheld cameras. We had even 35mm movie cameras and a big 70mm movie camera that could be used. And they also had a Fairchild 8x10 camera that was a big thing like this. It took a picture on an 8" by 10" negative. So all of that stuff was carried aboard the airplane, and after the operation people briefed the crews, then after the weather people briefed the crews, then the Coast and Geodetic Survey people briefed the crews, then I had to brief the crews on the equipment that my team had put aboard and how to use it and what it was for. And if they got anything when they came back, they were debriefed in the same order, and if they had experienced anything, they'd be turned over to me last, and they'd tell me what they experienced one by one. And while they were doing that, my crews would be downloading the cartridges, cassettes, and film cans, and all of those things we had. And if they had had an experience of any kind that was unique and important, the data would all be boxed in a metal box looked like a little footlocker, about that long and about that wide and about that high, and that was padlocked on a lieutenant's wrist and flown out to Washington every night on a courier. And he had to go to a certain office that had a key to take it off to unlock him and turn him loose. And they kept the box and sent it back on the next courier flight. We had several of those, and this was how the data was transmitted to Washington. We never had no way to read it. We couldn't develop that. We could, but they weren't allowed to develop the film, to read the tapes, to look at the movie camera film. Nothing.
But you were hearing stories.
Well, we'd hear the stories that resulted from the action that was on the film, but we never got to see any of it. So there were some real interesting stories about seeing objects sitting on the water, submerge and disappear as the B-29 came along. Other times they'd take off and fly away. Some once was seen to come to the surface and emerge and fly away. They saw them take off from the ice surface of the ice pack up there, the snowfield. And these are big objects, 100 feet in diameter, that have no ground support equipment. You know, to get a B-29 airborne in the Arctic in the wintertime, it takes a field of equipment around the B-29 as big as the B-29. Well, here were bigger craft sitting on the snow up there with no ground support equipment that take off and fly away at high speed. And that puzzled our senior leaders a good deal, because they wanted to believe that it was a Russian innovation that had come out of the war, that they didn't want to accept the idea that it might be extraterrestrial. In fact, I was almost alone in that idea. Most of the time, I'd tell my boss that I thought they were extraterrestrial beings, and he'd laugh and he'd say, "They can't come here from there and go back. Why would they come?" Because cosmic distances are too vast. You know, if it's going to take you 50 years to get someplace and 50 years to get home, who's going?
it!
Among the first photographs taken on the old tintype cameras was one at Drobak, Norway, showing a photographer with the big bellows over his head and a big camera on a tripod was taking a scene of the harbor, and late afternoon scene of the harbor, early evening, and he saw an object moving from right to left across the field of view, snapped a picture of it, and got perhaps the first photograph of a UFO at close range in Earth's atmosphere in the sky here. And that picture was taken on the 27th of July of 1907 at Drobak, Norway.
Now what you're witnessing is an extraterrestrial ship or UFO flying at its low speeds, right? These crafts work off electricity and anti-gravity when they're in the Earth atmosphere. Most of these ships are parked here. Some of them come from motherships, huger ships like similar to the aircraft carrier that the United States have. The question then becomes, why is they hovering around, snooping around, right? Usually when this happens, there's some type of malfunction going on because their cloaking device is not activated, thus they become visible. Now there are other cameras and different type of infrared devices that you can cop, and you can be able to see these things even if they got their cloaking device on, right? Also, may I point out, your government also have similar technology, which they got back in 1945, Operation Paperclip. We'll get more into that.
were the pictures taken during the Japanese invasion of China and their Manchurian operation. They used aircraft, and objects appeared over the flight line of the Japanese bombers preparing for missions. They appeared following the bomber formations in flight. They appeared in the sky above formations. They even passed through formations, much like the Foo Fighters of modern history, modern war history, except they were something else then. And it was during that time, during the Manchurian occupation, that a Chinese or a Japanese general in the occupation forces was walking down the street in Tianjin, China, and his attention was drawn to an object in the sky because the street photographer, one of those with the old bellows camera, had set up, and people started pointing and shouting and pointing to the object in the sky. Rickshaws stopped, crowds stopped, people pointed. The tin-type cameraman aimed his camera and took one picture of the object coming down the street. The Japanese general went over and bought it and took it back to Japan. And that's the photograph made in 1942 at Tianjin, China, in the middle, full day, daylight. One that was made over Los Angeles on the night of the 24th to 25th of February 1942. And this was after our war with Japan had started, and we had our cities in blackout at the time. Los Angeles was blacked out every night, San Francisco, San Diego, the whole west coast of the United States. And at early in the morning, like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, disc-shaped objects appeared over the city. And the anti-aircraft batteries turned on the searchlights, the objects passed back and forth through the searchlights, some dozen objects in the sky. They started, anti-aircraft batteries started firing on them, and they fired, golly, they fired 1,430 rounds, anti-aircraft rounds of ammunition. Didn't hit a thing that night. They killed a few people. The falling metal from the anti-aircraft shells killed people. Dogs set houses afire, did a lot of damage, but didn't hurt any, didn't bring down any alien craft.
Oh my God. Z York, trying to speed more.
trying to speed more. Trying to speed more. Trying to speed more. Trying to speed more. Trying to speed more. Trying to speed more. Trying to speed more. Trying to speed more. Trying to speed more.
Ах, черт побери, смотрите, они выстроились в один ряд и висят. Вот оно, доказательство НЛО. Видите, вот они висят над городом. Над городом Владивосток, вот они висят.
Now what happened on that day, the town's population of about 5,000 people then looked up and saw spaceships, circular, disc-shaped, metallic disc-shaped craft with domes on the top, passing over their city. They were changing position within the formation like a flock of bees or birds. They did not maintain a regular established formation. It was just a large gaggle of objects that flew over. Hundreds of them flew over for almost 2 hours, and the same thing happened the following day. One picture escaped collection by the military people that went there and canvassed the houses. They took all the pictures, took cameras, but somebody had in town, left town after taking the photographs and took one to Durango, Colorado, where he turned it into the Durango paper, and Durango published this one photograph. Shows about 7 or 8 of the objects in the sky, 5 of them in a loose formation at lower level and 4 or 5 at higher levels beyond it. A bird watcher walking in the woods on the 23rd of April 1950 was crashing through the underbrush, and he emerged into a clear area not far from Redbud, Illinois, facing the southwest. He came into a clearing from the south side, and as he stepped into the open area, he saw a large object hovering just over the scrub bushes there. Now, this was about 30 or 40 feet in diameter, and it was less than 100 feet high. It was below the tops of the trees. And as he stepped into the clearing there, it started to move, slowly at first, and then faster and faster. He had time to open his reflex camera, where you look in the top, and they're hard to sight in because the scene moves the opposite direction once you move the camera. And he got it open and got one picture, and by the time he could roll the film and get set up again, it had moved so far away he was afraid he wouldn't get it. He snapped the picture. He got a little dark spot in the sky, but it was not very definitive. It was just a dark smudge leaving. The first picture was a good, sharp, clear picture. And he turned it over to the local newspaper, and it was published on the paper. And a few days later, he was contacted by a newsboy who was throwing papers that time of day down the road in a rural area. And the newsboy said that he saw the object coming from the direction of the woods, heading down the highway at about 4 times, 5 times the speed of an airplane. And he looked up at it and saw it, and down the road a little ways, he came on a man and his wife working on the roof repairing it, and he said, "Did you see the thing that just went over?" And they said yes, they had watched it also. So there were other observers that corroborated Dean Morgan's story, and they came out in news reports the following day. So that was an interesting sighting because it represented a type seen rather close up and photographed within 100, 150 feet, 200 feet of the camera. The next one that got any real attention occurred on the 11th of May of 1952 at McMinnville, Oregon, at about 7:30 in the early evening of 11 May 1952. Farmer Paul Trent was in the kitchen of his home when he heard his wife, who called to him from the backyard to come out and see the strange object that was approaching. And he immediately ran for his folding camera and dashed outside to meet her. There against the low overcast sky, he saw a circular dome disc with a tower on top of the dome, a raised cupola. It was moving fairly slow. He had plenty of time to frame it. He snapped the first picture, and then he had to move to his right to snap the second picture. There was no flame or efflux of any kind visible, no sound. It was completely silent. His wife didn't hear any sounds either. The pictures he took on the 11th of May, and he didn't report them until the 12th of June, when he had his pictures developed and back, and he showed them to a friend, Frank Wortman, who suggested they take him to the newspaper, and they took him to the Richmond, California Independent, where they looked at them, tested them, and published them for the first time. So now that it's 2 months after the pictures were taken before the information got out. But they have become a classic in the lore of UFOlogy, I guess if you want to call it now. And they've been verified by a number of researchers.